assurance and protection of our people. I'm considering a complete closure of the border with Colombia. A prepared man is worth two. A prepared people is worth two.
Tonight, the Venezuela-Colombia border will be the site of dueling concerts. One organized by the British billionaire Richard Branson, the other by the Venezuelan government. This comes as U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is scheduled to visit Colombia Monday to demand President Maduro step down. Pence will deliver remarks to the Lima Group. Mexico is the only country in the group of 14 nations that has refused to recognize Juan Guaido as Venezuela's new president. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Medea Benjamin, the co-founder of the peace group Code Pink, disrupted an event there where Guaido's envoy to the United States spoke.
So, Gustavo,
excuse me, just as you were trying to take over the Venezuelan government, I want to say these people are fraud. They don't represent the Venezuelan people. They are representing the U.S. orchestrated coup. This is a very dangerous situation. They want to create a crisis at the border that would be a...
That's what they're doing. It's a coup. They want to start World War III.
Justification for U.S. intervention. This has nothing to do with a humanitarian situation. Indeed, for a humanitarian situation, the U.S. would lift the economic sanctions that have exacerbated the crisis. The issue at the border now is something that is politicizing humanitarian aid. That is why the Red Cross, the United Nations, and all the legitimate humanitarian groups have insisted that they will not touch this aid. What we need now is negotiations. These people here want to take Venezuela to a path of civil war and U.S. intervention. What the Venezuelan people need is negotiations mediated by Mexico, I'm almost finished, mediated by Mexico, by the Uruguayans, and by the Vatican. So let's say that if you indeed care about the people of Venezuela, you will be calling for negotiations. You will not recognize these people who are willing pawns in a Trump-orchestrated...
Willing pawns, that's what they are.
Thank you for listening to the Voice of Reason.
That was Medea Benjamin interrupting the opposition Venezuela news conference in Washington, D.C. Well, for more, we go to Caracas, Venezuela, where we're joined by Edgardo Landera, a sociologist who's part of the Citizens Platform in Defense of the Constitution. Landera is a retired professor at the Central University of Venezuela. Because it's in Caracas, there is a long audio delay, so please bear with us. Edgardo Landera, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you describe the situation in the country right now and the effect of the pressure on the border?
Good morning, Amy. Glad to be with you. The situation in Venezuela right now is really quite tense. The 23rd, that is Saturday, when the so-called humanitarian aid is supposed to come into the country, according to Guaido's people, no matter what, presents a very serious threat to Venezuela, a very serious threat in terms of the possibilities of violence. This is certainly not some humanitarian aid, it's a humanitarian intervention. If the United States were really interested in democracy, the government, of course, were interested in democracy, in human rights, and the humanitarian situation of the Venezuelan population, the first thing they would have to do is to stop the blockade that's impacting the Venezuelan people enormously, as the Venezuelan government has extreme difficulties in getting access to foreign markets. Its trade is made extremely difficult because the whole financial system is in one way or another controlled by the United States, and this blockade limits the possibilities of access to trade partners, etc. On the other hand, enormous amounts of money, billions of dollars in Venezuelan assets have been taken over by the U.S. government, and it's absolutely cynical that the US government is claiming to be worried about the humanitarian situation of Venezuelans, offering a few $1 million when billions of dollars have been kept away from the Venezuelan government's capacity to respond to the deep crisis that the Venezuelans are facing. There is this threat of going into Venezuela no matter what. The hawks in the new cons that accompany Trump in these policies are well known. These are people like Abraham or Elliott or Bolton that have had well-known trajectories of military interventions in different places of the world. And obviously there's no concern whatsoever for the lives of Venezuelan people.
Listen to the propaganda that the United States is putting out regarding what's going on over in Venezuela.
Dictator Nicolas Maduro ordering his army to open fire on Venezuelans attempting to cross the Brazilian border as they search for necessities. Things like food, things like water. 2 people are now dead, more than a dozen are injured, and as of tonight, we know that Maduro's troops have killed, as I said, 2 people and wounded dozens of others in Gran Sabana. This is the area right here.
Drama in her voice while she conjure up a war.
Blocked off. This deadly violence breaking out just hours ahead of a deadline imposed by Juan Guaido, the man Venezuela's constitution recognizes as the rightful president, the man we recognize as the rightful president, to bring aid across that border with Colombia in open defiance of Maduro. But what kind of guy doesn't want his people getting the food and medicine that they so desperately need? What kind of guy would be willing to fire on his own people when they're just trying to get some necessities
Listen to that propaganda
that the global community is willing to provide? Joining me right now, a former mayor in one of those boroughs in Caracas, Venezuela, a man living in exile now after being threatened with jail by Nicolas Maduro, Ramon Machado. Good to see you, sir. Welcome. Muchacho, forgive me.
Many thanks, Trish. Thank you for this invitation in such an important day for us.
I mean, I guess you heard me say that I think this is the moment of truth, but I think it's also the final hours, really, at this point.
So they're saying the final hours where Pence is supposed to go in militario on Monday to enforce crossing Venezuela border with supplies against the Venezuela Maduro's advice. So that's what she means by the final hour, because the military, United States military, Monday will go in the Venezuela border.